Hello and welcome to Bar Snacks. This is the channel all about business, finance and economics, staying up to date in the global economy, current affairs, politics and policy. As this is my first video, I think a little bit of explanation is required. Very interested in this kind of area. I like to keep up with what's happening in global economy and in the world of finance and business, essentially. In this video, we'll be looking at a few changes that have to be made to the tax system for the 21st century. It's an ever-changing world. Climate change is accelerating. Global liquidity is through the roof right now. It's absolutely insane. The markets are so volatile recently in the US. We've seen a lot of that. Trade war, there's tension escalating there. And I think that these changes can ensure a greater welfare for society as a whole. Number one, closing tax loopholes and tax havens. This one is very obvious, I think. Well, I should think that all of them would be pretty obvious. Some of these are just ridiculous. You read about it all the time in the Financial Times and the Private Eye and things like that about kind of nameless, kind of shady foreign ownership of various things, especially in the UK. I'm specifically interested in the UK, so see a lot of that. This kind of thing needs to stop, this kind of tax evasion, tax avoidance kind of grey area. Obviously, getting decreased government revenues from that and lower public spending and a tighter budget because of that. This thing it really just needs to stop at this point. It's been going on already for way too long and this needs to end. Also, closing silly tax loopholes in the system. I found a great article from Investopedia which just has some of the historically crazy tax loopholes. Florida rent-a-cow credit, which is completely ridiculous. Florida's property tax said that you can get much lower tax rates if your land is being used for agricultural purposes. No, ideally, this is quite a good idea, I think. Just absolutely terribly implemented and legislated. We want to encourage farmers to produce. Agriculture is a good thing. Yet, they said that as long as you can prove your land is agricultural, you can get it at a much lower tax rate. So Walt Disney and other places like that have a lot of land in Florida. They would bring in a few cows every now and again just to graze on a bit of grass or whatever and get much lower tax rates. There's a funny thing here that Tom Cruise dodges property tax on his vacation home by letting a few sheep hang out on his lawn. I mean, like, stuff like this is ridiculous and it needs to end now at this point. Number two, and this is also about decreased government taxation revenues. It's really popular subject in the news right now. Companies like Amazon, Starbucks, Google, that kind of thing, are avoiding paying sales tax in the UK by shoveling all their profits through Ireland. And obviously you can see why they would do this. Ireland is a very business-friendly place, but it's just unfair towards the places where they make these revenues, such as the UK. And the thing is, the Irish government obviously encourages this kind of thing from Google and the like. You see this kind of phrase get thrown about a lot these days about tax shaming, which is a good thing. This is where, the knowledge of practices like this is getting out there. The thing is that the reaction to taking advantage of tax legislation in this way is just not enough to dissuade them to stop doing it. Like, there was a little piece I saw in the news about a guy who's stopped using Google as his search engine. He doesn't buy things from Amazon and he doesn't go to Starbucks, all things he used to do. But come on, this is pennies to a massive corporation like that. There's no way that's going to change their decision in any way. Their market share and profit margins are just far too great for that. So I can't see this one stopping anytime soon, really. Okay, number three, and this one we definitely need in the 21st century, which is a carbon tax. It's talked about a lot. And then also subsidies for carbon neutral practices. And I think with the carbon neutral practices, you could also take that definitely a step further. If you can be carbon neutral and not be a polluting entity, then why can't you just give back? Why can't you be a regenerative business where you're actually improving the environment, not just having no effect? I think we definitely need to encourage this kind of behavior. Classic economic theory, you see it in every textbook. Every single one. You tax the things you want to discourage, you subsidise the things you want to encourage, obviously. This is known to any economic student, really. Carbon needs to be taxed. Pollution needs to be taxed. And taxed heavier than what I think, if it was ever implemented, it would start at. Because you see this kind of thing all the time. The ice caps are melting, biodiversity is going, ocean acidification is through the roof, and we need to stop this kind of thing. And then once a business is able to reach carbon neutrality and beyond, that's where a subsidy should come in, and a hefty subsidy as well. Number 4, mansion tax. Now this one has been tossed around in UK tax speak for quite a while, and it's essentially just a tax on very expensive homes. The name mansion tax, I think, is a kind of misnomer, because obviously a lot of properties, such as penthouses in cities and that kind of thing, are not mansions at all. They're not actually that huge, but obviously have a very high value because of location and prestige and that kind of thing. It has a couple of issues associated with it though. Number 1, valuation. Where do you put the bar on how expensive a property has to be before mansion tax has to be paid on it? Secondly, there is a kind of ambiguity about the market value of a home. If it's not listed on the market, how do you work that out? And there could be a bit of avoidance issues there with kind of low listed places. Number 5, increased sugar levies. This one I've actually personally seen the effects of. I've walked into places now where if you want to have a Coke, that will set you back, 20 pence, 30 pence more than a Diet Coke. And I think this is a good thing. I think that sugar levies are important in today's society. We need to all eat healthier at this point, discourage obesity. Once again, going back to that taxes and subsidies kind of thinking. But I think that they need to be bigger than they already are. 20 pence, it's not that huge. It's not that much extra expenditure just to get, what you want there. I think it should definitely be a lot larger. How large? I can't exactly say, but I would probably say that it needs to be at least 50, 60 pence more, definitely. This next one kind of ties in with the increased sugar levies, and it's higher tobacco duties. I think this is obvious. In London, at this point, I think it is £14 or so for a packet of cigarettes. But I would also argue that this needs to be higher as well, just like the sugar levies. Inevitably, the price will keep going up of a packet of cigarettes. And I think once you get to £1 a cigarette, then you're getting some serious kind of, people will have that kind of realization inside themselves about how expensive this is and what a drain on finances it can be. If you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, suddenly that's £20 a day, £140 a week. That's ridiculous kind of expenditure on something that you can give up. And I think we just need these higher tobacco duties for people's well-being. And here is higher vehicle registration tax. So I live in Singapore, and there aren't as many cars on the road as you would think in Singapore. It's a city-state, basically. It's a very tiny place, only about 50 miles across, very wealthy kind of place, busiest port in the world, 4 million people, and yet traffic jams, I don't think I've been in one ever here, because they've been able to manage how many cars are bought in a really effective way. So Singapore doesn't really believe in doing things by halves, and I think this is an approach that needs to be adopted by a lot of other governments as well. If you want to buy a car, firstly, cars are extremely expensive already, right? Then you need to get your license, which involves quite a lot more cost and a lot more time to get the license. But then if you want to drive at all, you need an extra kind of permit that is just 10,000 Singapore dollars straight away. 10,000 Singapore dollars. Just gone like that. If you want to be able to drive a car, just 10,000. It's a huge, huge cost, and it really does help keep cars off the road. And this is a good thing. It encourages bus use, MRT use, that's the train system here in Singapore, which is good for the government. Those are both owned by the government. They're state-owned properties, so that's increasing tax revenue for the government, and it also decreases the carbon output, the carbon footprint of the Singaporean people. It's a very good thing, and I think it needs to be implemented. Right, now, last thing of the video, and this one is already in quite a few countries. I've lived in England and Singapore, so I've had this my whole life, pretty much. So you have to include sales tax, VAT, GST, whatever, in the actual price written underneath an item at a shop, or on the board at a restaurant or a cafe or something like that. This is so obvious, come on. Firstly, calculations are hard to do in your head. You're spending more money than you wanted to or you thought you had to, and you can't, it's extremely inefficient. This is just a really obvious idea. And I've been to Canada a few times, I've been to the US a few times, and it's annoying every time. I don't know why they don't do it. I heard on NPR's podcast, Planet Money, which is where I heard they had an episode which was just ideas by leading economists about changes they would make to tax system, that kind of thing. I'll actually try and pull it up. You can listen to it here.
So you're looking at an iced tea. What size are you looking for?
Can I get the 16-ounce iced tea?
$3.15.
How much?
$3.15 with tax.
But it says on the board $2.89.
So the tax is 26 cents.
Okay. See, it's a little misleading.
What Catherine sees here is one price on the board and then this extra hidden thing that she has to pay for.
You obviously get an example there of the kind of frustration that you have to go through. It's efficient and it makes life easier. So just why not implement it? America is the world's biggest economy, right? It needs to be as efficient as possible. And this is just an easy way to just make everyone's lives easier. Yes, it makes things seem more expensive than they used to be, but they're not. They're not at all. This is just a good change you have to make. All right, thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one. This was Bar Snacks.